We had spent just over a year planning the campaign on paper. Now, long months of work lay ahead of us to materialize all the technical devices and means which would enable us to submerge our cameras into the depths of Carrandi in Asturias. The countdown had begun. We had the advice of specialists in submarine technology and also counted on the collaboration of expert biologists from the Marine Research Institute and the National Natural Science Museum. On board the two oceanographic ships, the Investigador and the Científico, we spent long weeks checking the watertightness, the resistance and the sensitivity of special cameras capable of recording in the extreme conditions of pressure and darkness of the ocean depths. Time was running out. We wanted to undertake the campaign at the end of the summer, and the Cantabrian Sea was not an easy place in which to work. While we checked the stability and floatability of the buoys designed to carry the cameras, our chief engineer, Joaquin de Gracia, made the final adjustments to the key element in our campaign, a case specially designed for the Kraken project. Inside it, a sophisticated system would make it possible to record continuously for the 15 days of the campaign the images captured by the submarine cameras and store them on a series of hard drives. The complexity of the system was due to the fact that it had to have a total autonomy, a decisive factor in the campaign. The case would remain inside a floating buoy and would be connected by a thick optic fiber cable to the structure carrying the camera, a structure with an adjustable lighting system, infrared lights, and different acoustic and optical signals which would serve as lures. The buoy and camera system, whose nerve center was the recording case, would be autonomous and would be regulated from our ships. And to cover the search area we had chosen, we had 3 similar sets of equipment which defined an equilateral triangle inside which we would move around with our ships. The long-awaited day finally came. On board the ships Investigador and Científico, belonging to the company Investigaciones Marinas, we set sail for the Carrandi fishing ground. We are not alone on our adventure. In order to carry out the campaign, we had requested an exclusion zone to keep the study area free from maritime traffic, and the patrol boat Mauro of the Spanish Navy accompanied us to guarantee compliance with this. Finally, 2 years after we had first considered the idea, we were setting off in search of the legendary giant squid. The first mission of the campaign consisted of carrying out a bathymetry which would enable us to establish the points chosen for the positioning of our cameras. At 43 degrees 56 seconds north and 5 degrees 29 seconds west, we located the so-called Pozo de la Vaca, a narrowing of the submarine canyon where we would place the 3 cameras at depths of 800, 700 and 500 meters respectively. Now we were sailing over the Carrandi Trench, the territory of the enigmatic Kraken. The Carrandi Trench, less than 30 kilometers from the coast of Asturias, sharply falls to unfathomable depths, down to over 3,000 meters. At the start of its drop from the continental platform, Carrandi forms underwater canyons along which the currents drag large amounts of nutrients on which enormous shoals of small fish feed. And these in turn attract the large predators, among them the giant squid. And here in the so-called Pozo de la Vaca, the land relief enabled us to locate the 3 cameras in different substrata and at different depths within the influence of one of these currents. If designing, constructing and testing the cameras was a complex task, positioning them at the chosen places represented a truly formidable challenge. The structure of the buoys, ballasted with a dead weight of 3,000 kilos, weighed over 5 tons, and the Cantabrian Sea does not make things easy. Finally, having stabilized the anchor of the first buoy, the time came to send one of our cameras into the depths of the ocean. The air was thick with emotion. We were going to open a window onto an unknown world which no one had ever seen. As the camera descended, the optic fiber umbilical cord that joined it to the buoy indicated the depth of descent. We positioned this first one at 700 meters on one of the walls of the underwater canyon. Now all we had to do was wait for the signal which would reach us live and by radio from the first buoy that was already freely floating above the Carrandi Trench. Inside the viewing cabin, which we named Calypso, the tension was similar to that which preceded the first moon landing. We were going to be the first to violate the perpetual darkness of the ocean depths, the first to shine a light into the primeval darkness of the Cantabrian Sea. The first images showed a black empty world as the camera descended. But after long minutes, the lights began to be reflected. The descent was coming to an end. And finally, solid ground. The reference marker raised clouds of sediment on a surface of rock and silt where thousands of small invertebrates welcomed us. It was an emotional moment. We were discovering a new world, and these were the first images. That same night, we would receive surprising confirmation that our camera was indeed in the right place. A trawler brought on board a giant squid caught at barely 300 meters from the outer limit of our first buoy. This squid, 6 meters in length, would represent quite a find, as it turned out to be a male, much less frequent and smaller than the females. This was the first male Architeuthis ducks caught south of parallel 55 north in the Atlantic Ocean. And what was more important, the best conserved of all. There could have been no better start to the campaign. Little did we imagine the problems that lay ahead of us. Four days into the campaign, we had already positioned our 3 buoys. The first one had stabilized at a depth of 612 meters. The lure emitter had started to bring results, and the tiny crustaceans that approached, attracted by it, were quickly followed by the hunters of the ocean depths. We worked in 4-hour shifts to constantly view the monitors as we sailed the area marked out by the buoys, which sent us the signal from the cameras. The second camera rested on the seabed at 709 meters from the surface. To this one, the deepest, we had attached an infrared lens and lights so that the lights would not frighten the animals accustomed to perpetual darkness. We lost quality of image, but new shadows around the lure reaffirmed the decision to use infrareds. The third camera was suspended in the darkness of the water column at a depth of 530 meters. This was the one that least drew our attention during the watch shifts, but it was the one that would give us the first surprise when small intermittent lights began to appear dotted across the darkness. The lights resembled the silhouette of squid, or that's what it looked like to us, so we were anxious to know the opinion of our experts. Watching the monitors in real time, it was difficult to identify the species that appeared, and even more so if they did so intermittently. But doctors Ángel Guerra and Ángel González concluded that they must be squid with photophores of the species genera Abralia or Braliopsis, small light-emitting cephalopods that can reach depths of 800 and 1,000 meters respectively. It was our first encounter with the lights of the ocean depths. Below depths of 200 meters, not a single ray of light penetrates the reigning darkness, and so the species of these reaches have developed their own lights. "90% of the species that live in the ocean depths are bioluminescent. That is, they are capable of generating their own light. In a world where the darkness is total and permanent, these ghostly lights serve many different purposes. Some use them to attract their prey. Others to deflect the attacks of predators by presenting them with false lures or to emit alarm signals. And many simply to communicate with others of the same species. Among the cephalopods, too, bioluminescence is very widespread, and some species have even changed their traditional means of defense, adapting it to this dark world, expelling a stream of luminous ink. Little by little, we were identifying different species of the depths off the coast of Asturias as they appeared on the monitors of the Calypso. The campaign was progressing as planned, and the hopes that an Architeuthis or Taningia would appear before our cameras grew day by day. Work progressed as normal on board the Investigador and the Científico. Even the Cantabrian Sea appeared to have declared a truce which facilitated the tasks on board our ships. But when you work in the depths of the ocean, you know that problems can appear at any moment, without prior warning. On the 17th of September, the alarms of the first buoy went off in the Calypso. One of the buoys had disappeared. There were only two possibilities. Either the anchor had broken and the buoy was drifting, or a ship had hit it and a buoy had sunk. During the whole day, the Investigador combed the drift zone from the place where the buoy had been anchored, following the direction of the current, while Fernando Santiáñez, its captain, gave notice to the Naval Command.
Más se ha hundido, que ha sido en el fondeo norte, que tiene 800 metros, se ha hundido por la mitad.
Little did we imagine at the time that all our efforts would be in vain. The buoy, and with it our first case containing the images recorded over 6 full days, had been lost forever. But the problems had only just begun. One of the antennae of the buoys was experiencing problems in broadcasting and needed an emergency repair. Shortly afterwards, in the Calypso, the alarm went off indicating water in one of the cameras. It never rains, but it pours, yet still morale remained high despite these many setbacks. We were well aware of the difficulties we would face. We still had many possibilities of coming face to face with the giant squid, and we weren't about to give up now. In addition to the repairs to the flooded camera, the new situation required adjustments in the depth of the other 2 cameras, and our chief engineer managed to make them in record time, remaining awake all night to do so. We had come through the worst days of the campaign, but once more we had images of the ocean depths. We were again on the hunt for the elusive, legendary Kraken. Now we were working with just 2 cameras. One of them remained in the water column at around 30 meters from the seabed, while the other rested on a surface of silt where, beneath the infrared light, stealthy fish and crustaceans prowled around our lures. The enthusiasm of the scientists was contagious as they pronounced hypotheses on the species that appeared on our monitors. And that enthusiasm was more than justified. We were privileged witnesses to a world that no one had ever seen before. Finally, with the 2 buoys stabilized, we could continue with the envisaged campaign plan. The time had come to use our submarine robot. Before submerging our little remote-controlled robot, we planned to bait the ocean depths in order to attract the greatest possible number of species, especially the potential prey of the Architeuthis. For this, we had brought with us 1,500 kilos of frozen mackerel and sardines. 1,500 kilos, which we had to put into biodegradable bags, then tie these to the sinkers and methodically cast them overboard. To distribute the bait, we had divided up the chosen area, a gently sloping plain at depths of between 300 and 400 meters, into a grid with a total surface area of 8 hectares, into which we would cast 100 bags of bait, one for each one of the intersections of the grid. At nightfall, with the baiting completed, the weather began to change. An impressive storm welcomed the Sea Rover, the remote-controlled submarine whose camera would become our mobile eye in the ocean depths. Armed with a highly sensitive video camera, our small emissary set off on its journey, shattering the reigning darkness. The robot was controlled from the Calypso, and with the storm, this was no easy task. But it was the counterpoint to the cameras and the buoys. While they waited for an Architeuthis to approach, attracted by the bait, the Sea Rover went out in search of it. Little by little, our spy was revealing the secrets of a world which had remained hidden since the very origins of the ocean. The first reflections that came from the ocean depths opened a window onto a different world. A desert of brown silt where large clawed crabs of the Muninda genus stared in astonishment at the unexpected intruder. The underwater currents caused some slight problems on those first steps around the ocean depths. But the Sea Rover continued on its way without major setbacks, and the first beings of that region prohibited to man began to appear before our astonished eyes. From the first moments of its journey around the depths of the ocean, the little submarine robot gave information that filled our scientific team with enthusiasm. The fauna of that underwater desert was scarce. The majority of the species that crossed our silent path in search of cephalopods were invertebrates, beings of strange ethereal appearance that floated in the limitless darkness like extraterrestrial creatures from a distant planet, as unknown and foreign to man as these ocean depths that were now slowly revealing their secrets to us. For 3 days, the Sea Rover plunged down again and again into that strange lunar landscape, where despite the bait we had scattered, there were very few fish, with only certain crustaceans, penatulas, and the spry and larvae of different species, bringing movement to the desert of silt. The absence of life in that apparently inviolate abyss surprised us, but some devastating drag marks reminded us that the hand of man reaches much further than we could possibly imagine. Perhaps these tracks could, in part, be responsible for this deathly quiet. From time to time, the currents disturbed the seabed, and a cloud of sediment filled the dark, barren desert of the depths. Then calm once more returned, and once again we saw sea pens, tube anemones, sea cucumbers, small shrimp, and elusive spry. But nothing that revealed the presence of the Kraken. On the night of the 24th, our spirits began to fail. The Architeuthis had still not appeared, and time was running out. And then, from the Calypso, the alarm rang out.
Venga, Francisco, creo que ha aparecido, ¿sí? Esto lo tenemos que enganchar, esto lo tenemos que enganchar.
We all came out of our cabins and headed towards the Calypso, knowing that the alarm could be our last opportunity to film a giant squid. On one of our fixed cameras, in the invisible infrared light, a squid of just over 1 meter in length was prowling around the pilot light of the third buoy. The animal, Architeuthis agitatus, was an interesting species for our scientists, but its appearance brought the disappointment of not having achieved our objective. The campaign was coming to an end. We had used up all our time and we felt a bittersweet sensation. We had not captured images of a living Architeuthis, but we had opened a door for exploration of the Carrandi Trench, an area where the existence of the enigmatic giant squid had been demonstrated. Among the members of Transglobe, a new desire had been born, even stronger and more determined than that which had brought us to the ocean depths of Carrandi. Our adventure had not ended. We had every intention of returning with our cameras in search of the giant squid.